Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining us. This is another body language explained experiment that we're doing, and this week we are looking at the first part of what any good story should be, in that of two sides, and we're looking at the exploitations of Mr. Michael Jackson and everything that came out of his Finding Neverland, Escaping Neverland rather. Finding Neverland was the Johnny Depp film, wasn't it? Escaping Neverland documentary, and the accusations really that have been following him around for years. A couple of you have sent in some of the footage of his deposition for me to have a look at, so we're going to do that first, and then next time we'll have a look at the footage from the guys making the accusations, really. But in time-honoured tradition, if this is your first time to the channel, let me introduce myself. My name is Ben Cardall, and I am the author of the best-selling book The Monographs, which details the real-world application of the skill set of Sherlock Holmes and how to apply that to everyday life in no matter what vocation you work. It will take you step by step right the way through from never having looked at deducing information about a person through to what would be considered quite proficient. And I now spend my days working with some of the top guys in the field, teaching people and corporations and businesses and security personnel how to do this for themselves and those around them. And that's how I spend my time. These videos, I look to try and encourage these methods within you guys for critical analysis of that which we view, to stay out of the realms of cognitive dissonance and emotional bias that can skewer our opinion of exactly what these reads are one way or another, depending upon our own personal worldviews. Okay, so yeah, with that in mind, if that sounds like something you are interested in, then by all means subscribe to the channel. It would make a hairy man very happy, but currently so do the painkillers I'm on. So it's up to you, really, but it doesn't cost you anything either. But yeah, there will be talking, there will be explaining of points, making sure that every option and no stone is left unturned. So with that in mind, let's have a look. The thing that I try and do with all of my videos is to try and stay away from as much pre-information as possible, to possibly skewer my own reasoning of the information one way or the other, right? But with this being as infamous as what it is, you can't get away from the fact that everybody knows at least something about Michael Jackson. You know, it's the name of Sherlock Holmes again. You know, whether you've read the stories or whether you haven't, you know, you at least know the name. So you bring some kind of information to the table anyway. So what we know of Michael Jackson at this stage is there has been a hell of a lot of work done on his face. So there will be musculoskeletal stuff that doesn't move in an anatomically correct way. So what we can say in terms of some of the expressions that may or may not be made, and some of the gestures that may or may not be made, they won't conform to the traditional movements that we expect from somebody who has the same emotional palette and the same thoughts, feelings regarding the information that he believes to be true. They will be under physical restrictions, I suppose, is the best way of looking at it. So with that in mind, let's have a look.
She can't stop. She can't stop her from making it. There's nothing you can do.
Some chamomile tea over there that might settle it down. The first problem is it might put you to sleep. You're welcome.
So one of the things you can say first of all, right, and we've looked at a fair bit of deposition footage on this channel already, is that somebody's feelings regarding the seriousness of what's being discussed or what's going on should be taken into account, right? But if you look at his pathological makeup, the guy, irrespective of these accusations at this moment, has not had a childhood, has not had anything close to the normal way that somebody would like to grow up and develop the kind of standard social parlances that we all have, right? So there's definitely a childlike sense of tension and that need to giggle through awkwardness about this initial encounter, right? Immediately, most people, I imagine, given the nature of the accusations, would be jumping to him disregarding the information, not taking it seriously, showing some sense of delight, you know, some sense of egocentrism. The egocentrism here would need to be accepted because he's lived in this world of yes men and fame and fortune since he was a child in the Jackson 5, right? So the behavioural baseline, as it were, will not be anywhere close to the same. This is what I mean by constantly analysing the context of a scenario in order to get towards the truth of the matter. We can't apply the reads of conventional Joe Bloggs walking down the street who played in his front yard till he was young, went to high school, met friends, after school clubs, you know, the standard stuff that you hear.
Mr. Jackson, in the latter portion of 1993, there were some allegations leveled at you concerning improper conduct with some young boys. I assume you're familiar with the fact that those allegations were raised. Is that right?
Yes.
In fact, there was ultimately at least 2 grand jury inquiries into that I am currently aware of, although counsel tells me there may have been a third. Were you aware that grand jury investigations were conducted into those allegations?
Yes.
Okay, so what we get then, initially, is a look at the way his face moves as close to rest as we're going to see given the nature of a deposition, right? You would expect high levels of tension, which, given the high levels of tension he would have experienced up until that stage in terms of big performances, media, news, paparazzi endeavours, they've been investigating his life for decades, there would be a certain amount of calm, that might not be the best word, with which he would approach the scenario. Okay, this is really just to establish the baseline of how he reacts to particular questions. Do you recognise this? Yes. Did this happen? Yes. We're getting an acknowledgement of truth and a way for us to base the differentiations from moving forward.
Strike that. Did you know at the time that the grand jury was investigating these matters that they were in fact investigating? In other words, you didn't find out after it had completed. You knew in advance that people were being subpoenaed to testify.
In advance?
Yeah, poorly phrased. Let me rephrase it. It is my understanding that some of...
Okay, so that's where we can first see an element of unease, right? Now, the unease may be to do with the nature of the expectation of what's about to be discussed, in that if he is genuinely, you know, not guilty of everything that's been thrown at him, that would make you feel unease to have those accusations levied at you, right? But you see the nature of the swallow behaviour. You can't see where I'm pointing because of this thing, but the swallow behaviour, I suppose that would hide mine quite well. The nature of the swallow behaviour when your throat begins to dry out through excessive breathing, through anxiety beginning to grow, the type of gulps that you do and the number of them, the type of gulps would become more pronounced, and the number of which go on would grow up, would go up. So if we look at the build up to that, you can see when he already starts to swallow what's being built up here in the action, but when it goes down hard.
Allegations were raised, is that right?
Yes.
In fact, there was ultimately at least 2 grand jury inquiries into that I am currently aware of, although counsel tells me there may have been a third. Were you aware that grand jury investigations were conducted into those allegations?
Yes.
Strike that, did you know
Hard gulp.
at the time that the grand jury was investigating these matters that they were in fact investigating? In other words, you didn't find out after it had completed. You knew in advance that people were being subpoenaed to testify.
In advance?
Yeah, poorly phrased. Let me rephrase it.
See, that's weird, because we get the move forward, the hands coming onto the table, but the drop back in the seat as well. So we've got a kind of incongruency in the behaviour, which in terms of retreating, if you look at the territorial sense of behaviour, when we see hands retreating, it's usually a fear response to things that make us anxious. So the opposite of that is things that we feel positively about, things that provide us with a certain level of comfort, combined with the dropping in the seat. Depending upon what kind of seat it is, the level of physical comfort that he's feeling, this may work in tandem with that, but the nature of the encroaching on somebody's territory here shows at least that he has he has at least a comfort in seeing that wrong questions are being asked, or they're being phrased in an incorrect way. Now, what this means moving forward, we don't know yet because I haven't watched the whole thing. But what this means in terms of himself, he could be acknowledging that this person doesn't really have a great deal of information of any strength regarding a case or accusation that's been thrown at him, which would provide him with a level of comfort. Or he might just see that the way the questions that are being asked of him are done so in an incorrect manner, so that will be good for his legal side moving forward, given the expertise that's been thrown at him. Right? These are things that we can think about moving forwards here as an observer of the scenario.
It is my understanding that some of Neverland Valley Ranch employees were subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury. Do you know that to be the case as well?
Yes.
Are you familiar with a person named Jordy Chandler?
We're not going there. Don't answer.
Okay, so presumably then the Jordy Chandler is one of the guys leveling accusations at him. So he's been asked not to answer for the sake of his protection. I would, that's a discussion for the American legal system, of which I know very little about, so I'm not going to comment on. But if you look at the eyebrow raise towards the start there, if we go back.
Know that to be the case as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you familiar?
Yes, of course I know that to be the case. They are my staff, as it were. These are all elements that would necessarily read true. There's no incongruence. There's no big movements. There's no masked sense of anxiety regarding the answers moving forward. But here, when we step into this territory, even though the level of work that's been done means that his cheekbones are more pronounced, and whatever's gone on to craft his chin out there, I don't know what that plastic surgery term is, but he definitely didn't have that structure there in terms of his birth. So the fact that we see that move in line with the the head shake is an element of disbelief regarding, you know, I can't believe I'm having to go through this again. This is annoying, but I'm doing this just for the sake of it, just to shut you people up.
With a person named Geordie Chandler.
We're not going there. Don't answer.
And that was a legitimate who, right? He's probably met, I don't know, I would be throwing a random number out, a lot of people, right? And if nothing stands out about the name in terms of particular significance, then you're going to struggle to attach you know, a person to their name. Now, this could be taken in a couple of ways. He could be, you know, this serial, heinous person who has committed so many of these offences with so many people that he just doesn't recall their names because he doesn't care. But we would see much more of a grandiose sensibility of his actions. It would stem more so into ego, having been troubled with somebody's name, rather than this, who's that? And he looks around for confirmation from others until, who I'm presuming is his legal counsel, tells him not to answer. He goes, okay, back in the box.
Here with a person named Geordie Chandler.
We're not going there.
Looks around.
Don't answer.
Okay.
We're not going to get into who he knows and doesn't know. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and ask it. But I believe it's beyond the scope of discoverable matters in the case.
Whether he knows of Geordie Chandler?
Right.
You're not going to allow me to ask him any questions about Jordan Chandler in any fashion?
Well, we'll take them one by one, but...
Look, I can't ask him whether he knows him. I suppose that would sort of preclude other ones, don't you think?
Yeah, probably would.
And may I ask for the...
Now again, you get that level of pathological makeup in which someone who has the opinion that he is this horrible person sees the smiles that he's burying there, and with the tension in the lips, the unwillingness to show the teeth into a full smile. That would be seen as confirmation of acknowledgement of his evil wrongdoings, in the same way that people are so immediately inclined to jump to duping delight when somebody smiles, partially through a discussion of deception. But you can't not, and I'm not saying that's not the case, you can't not acknowledge the fact that this guy has had a remarkably stunted social development. You know, he's gone to great lengths to craft his nose into the shape of Peter Pan's, right? To live that vicariously through what he perceives to be childlike in nature. You would giggle through these tense moments, you know. When you were a child and you saw two people having an argument that you weren't directly involved in at all, there was this nature of, I can't listen to that. Oh God, that's so awkward, right? And then watch this again with that light.
Don't answer. We're not going to get into who he knows and doesn't know. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and ask it. But I believe it's beyond the scope of discoverable matters in the case.
Whether he knows of Geordie Chandler?
Right.
Preventative.
You're not going to allow me to ask him any
Lips,
questions
teeth.
about Jordan Chandler in any fashion?
Well, we'll take them one by one, but...
Look, I can't ask him whether he knows him. I suppose that would sort of preclude other ones, don't you think?
Yeah, probably would.
Yeah. Ooh.
And may I ask for the record what the basis upon which you are going to refuse to allow this witness to disclose whether he knows Mr. Jordan Chandler? As you know, counsel, during the course of discovery in this case, you have already gone into, and I think Mr. Sanger has already gone into, at some depth,
And for a deposition, this is a long time spent talking to other people other than the client here. So there is going to be that sense of and if you are comfortable in that scenario, that might leak out given your behavioral makeup at that stage, right? And again, I'm not confirming one way or the other here at this stage, because I can't, mostly because I don't have the evidence to do so. But these are the observations that we can make here moving forward, right? These are the things that when new information is given to us, we can look to have our initial observations either confirmed or denied, or new ones made. So this is what we need to think moving forwards here about Mr. Jackson.
Position that was taken in the case of Geordie Chandler versus Michael Jackson, given by Adrian McManus. There are issues that are certainly relevant to my interest as to why you inquired as to those depositions that Adrian gave, and you're now telling me I can't even ask whether he knows the man or go into any such areas?
Yeah, let me
Isn't there
cover
a
that.
quote that comes to mind of what's good for the goose is good for the gander?
Oh, come on, Karen.
What?
Aesop's fame.
Let me just make sure my understanding is clear. Is it your position that you will instruct Mr. Jackson not to answer any questions that pertain to the issue of Geordie Chandler in any way, whether it be claims?
Okay. So had the hand not been there, we'd at least know a little bit more about his feelings regarding the matter, yeah? This is one of those moments where I'm tired, but this is serious. This is an impolite scenario for me to be doing this, okay? If he didn't really care about the situation and felt above it all, there would be nothing to stop him from going and having that there. Wouldn't have covered it with the paper, wouldn't have covered it with his hand. So there is an element of politeness about that move and acknowledgement of the situation that they are in, which still works in line with somebody who is telling his truth, his version of the truth, right? Because there are people that would argue that his version is not the truth. I'm not sure of the correct English way to say that, but hopefully you know what I mean.
Leveled by Geordie Chandler, if any, or discovery in the Geordie Chandler case vis-a-vis Adrian McManus's deposition and allegations that she testified falsely, any of that you're not going to let him go into?
That's right. I believe that's correct. With respect to the motivations that are, in your view, germane to the allegations.
Now, we can talk for a little bit about pacifying in the gestures regarding the hat and the hair back here. Having had long hair for a long period of time and being a lover of hats, not necessarily fedoras, but hats in general, when you have thick hair, regardless of whether it's real or fake, when you have thick hair, the back of your neck will become fiery level warmth. Fiery level warmth. And it only takes the acknowledgement of a couple of hairs that brush against your neck for that to become an itchy place and something that won't go away unless you remove your hat and air out the back of your neck. So these are things we have to take into account moving forward when we look at the nature of pacifying, because you could argue that this would be his go-to pacifier for the sense of calming growing levels of anxiety, but it could also be argued that he is just doing this because the back of his neck is warm, which appears to be the case because there's nothing else going on in terms of his body language that would suggest growing levels of anxiety or deception or inhibiting the responses that he's giving.
In the complaint, my client has testified that he knows nothing about those matters that you want to explore his motivations on. So therefore, there's a lack of foundation. But let's just go do what you want to do.
You've raised something that sort of catches me by surprise. You say your client has testified that he knows nothing about these matters. Is this at today's deposition you're referring to, or some other deposition that I was not present at?
Today.
That is strange, since I have not asked about that issue until just now. I have not asked about the allegations.
The comfort remark again. Why am I even here? Can we get to it, please? Right? We got the look out of the window, watching the days pass by. Now, if you think for a second, regardless of how serious the nature of the discussion is, if you think for a second the last time somebody accused you of doing something that you didn't do, what was your reaction to that? Were you irreversibly indignant and going on the offensive, or were you more of a, yeah, well, I didn't do that, talk about whatever you want? As far as what it is, you know, I'm not going to be angry enough to confront you on that, because that's not me. Are you the type of person who sits there and lets you waste your breath burning out your stories because it's all going to come to nothing in the end? I'm being very black and white about that scenario here, but there's a number of situations that could fit into either camp. And that appears to be what the case is here.
Specifically, I have asked about investigation. Were you aware?
Not looking out the window, there's clearly other people behind then. Given the nature of the chin movements there. What was that? You okay? That's a way that we can silently ask other people if they are all right. If it doesn't come from the eyebrows in terms of... Sorry. If it doesn't come from the eyebrows in terms of... It'll come from the... in a both. We English people do that in the offering of a hot drink. We'll hold up a cup and go. To which someone else will go. And that's this whole silent conversation that you can have.
Aware that Jordan Chandler or his family on his behalf filed a lawsuit against you?
Yes.
Were you aware that at some point in time in that lawsuit, Adrienne McManus gave her deposition?
I'm not positive.
Okay. So we've got there the back to the swallow behaviour, the lip licking, and the actually taking time to think about the response. Okay? Not positive. Not positive is an answer that is a truthful response. It's not an exclusion in terms of not to my knowledge. You know, when somebody would say something like, did this go on at this time? Were you aware of this? Not to my knowledge. That's a way to exclude yourself from the information that's going on there. That would be a node for deception. But I'm not positive is an ownership of your opinion regarding this, right? Did this happen? I'm not positive. I think so. It might have done. I have an opinion on this. I am still included in this, right? This is an ownership response there. The lip licking and the gulping is definitely aligns with discomfort rather, would be a better word. Deep breathing, regardless of how stunted it might be here. There's not a lot of movement you can see in, sorry, even if my hand's not there. There's not a lot of movement you can see, but my mouth will dry out because of that air that's passing by there. The lip licking and the swallowing will be a way to re-moisten what's going on, to try and calm everything down.
Your answer confuses me. How do you mean you're not positive? You don't know whether she gave her deposition or not?
Exactly.
So then, if I understand it correctly, you are not going to allow me to go into any areas in connection with Brett Barnes. Is that right? Well,
you can ask. There's nothing I can think of, but if you... I'm not going to categorically say you can't ask.
Now, see, that was a weird one. That was a weird one because that was incongruent with the other notions of fixing the hair at the back and fixing the hat. It was one-sided. It was a way to do this. But with it being double and a big reaction with the eyebrows and everything else.
Is that right?
Well, you can ask. There's nothing I can think of, but I'm not going to categorically say you can't ask anything about him, but.
Okay, so there's something particular about that Brent guy. Something there. Doesn't necessarily mean anything nefarious at all. It can be very much along the lines of, I'm sick of talking about it, and if I have a legal precedent not to go over it, then I'm not going over it. And again, you could argue that if you were telling the truth, why would that be the case? But there was definitely a peak explosion in terms of discomfort there. Even though it was a symmetrical gesture, it's incongruent to the previous ones.
But I don't think there's anything relevant. So irrelevant that I'm not inclined to let you get into it unless...
I don't think there's anything relevant. So does Michael.
There's an area that you believe is directly tied to the case.
Well, I believe it, but I have a feeling that my believing it's not going to convince you of much.
You are correct. You are correct.
Tied to the case.
Well, I believe it, but I have a feeling that my believing it's not going to convince you of much.
That should be under the dictionary definition for you. Goddamn right. Right? So I have a feeling that my believing that isn't going to convince you of much. Yeah, move on. So there's definitely something of note in that Brent guy.
To your knowledge, Mr. Jackson, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Brett Barnes?
Won't answer that.
Do you know...
Look at the length of time that's gone on. If somebody had asked you if you stole something that you didn't, would you be able to say no and shake it off immediately? Regardless of how you might feel about the accusation, would you be able to say no? If somebody sat you down and believed you'd stolen something, would you be able to just go no and leave it at that? 90% of us, without some form of training to control our responses, don't have the capacity to do that. We know that stealing's bad, and therefore it's a threat against our character. We respond no, and it keeps going. It's like the nature of a truly felt emotional state. If you want to see if it is fake or not, you watch how long it takes to vanish. If they vanish, they're fake. Same could be said here, no. That's just words that are said in response that if you were to read it on paper would make sense. But this truly felt disbelief comes across.
The case.
Well, I believe it, but I have a feeling that my believing it's not going to convince you of much.
Exactly.
To your knowledge, Mr. Jackson, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Brett Barnes?
Won't answer that.
you could argue that the looking towards his legal counsel for such an extended period of time is looking to ask for permission to respond to that, because he's going to be thinking, I should get out ahead of this to deny the accusation of molestation. However, he's been advised not to. But look at that. What? No. There's nothing incongruent. There's nothing that speaks towards deceptive markers. There's as much anger as he can muster in the eyebrows, given the work that's gone on.
Won't answer that.
But just because somebody smiles in response to a question like that is no indication of guilt. It's not. You look at any kind of situation that you believe you would react to however you would. Until you're in that situation, you have no idea. No idea. You know, the only thing that I ever go to that quite a lot of people would relate to is the nature of combat. Having taken a number of martial arts classes for the last 25 years, you train and you train and you train and you train and you train, but it's all controlled. Until that fight actually happens, where it's a real fight, for whatever reason, you have no idea how you're going to respond. No idea. Same could be said here. Just because you see somebody smiling in response to an allegation this serious is not an indication of guilt at all. Because it's not a genuinely felt smile. It's not an enjoyment smile.
Do you know a person by the name of Macaulay Culkin?
Yeah.
No.
Get your answer.
So you're going to let him answer questions about Macaulay Culkin?
Let him answer that one.
To your knowledge, were you ever accused of having sex?
I think that's the closest we'll see to anger. From the smile, which isn't a smile, it's more of a teeth baring. But again, because of the work that he's had done, it highlights that in a non-traditional sense.
To your knowledge,
look at that. Hands behind the head, congruent levels of disbelief, anger, frustration.
Were you ever accused of having sexually molested Macaulay?
That's an instruction not to answer on that one.
I think the tongue got involved there on that one, in the middle lip. In the middle here, I was trying to say.
To your knowledge, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Macaulay?
That's an instruction not to answer on that one.
That's definitely a result of anger. That's definitely a result of anger. Which one would expect of somebody being accused for however many years he has been accused of it at this stage. Still keen to cover up this. There within here, again, still feeling a bit of rage, bit of anger.
This is as good a copy of the document as I have available to me at this time. Let me ask you this. Do you recognize the handwriting on these two sheets?
Yes.
Do you know whose handwriting it is?
It's mine.
Do you know what these documents are?
Yeah.
What is this?
Crazy stories that people have created. Things I wanted to set straight in an interview.
Do you know with whom this interview was
The next, I think it could have been Diane Sawyer, whatever the interview was that I wanted to do. I want to set the record straight, that if people hear a lie long enough, people believe it, that people have lied on me. I'm a black American and I'm proud of it, and I'm honored of it. The bleached skin rumor, which is a rumor, I don't bleach my skin. They once said I wanted a white kid to play me as a child, which was a rumor. Inauguration rumor, saying I didn't want to do President Clinton's inauguration. I'm not gay. This says, don't judge a person unless you have spoken to them one-on-one, which is true. Because what you hear...
Just look at everything you've seen so far. There's no behavioural change throughout it. There's no sense of differentiation in terms of how he feels about one remark over the other. They're all treated with that same level of stupidity. This happened, well, I'm not. This happened, well, I'm not. This happened, well, I'm not. There's no signs of deception. There's no signs of inhibiting his responses. There's no sign of controlling the words that he's saying. You got to think, for somebody who is as famous as he is, would be asked to do as many interviews as what he does, unless, you know, you've got a trained memory. How are you supposed to recall a random interview with a random person on a specific date? Unless you've previously spoken about it beforehand in terms of preparation, which they may or may not have gone through. I have no idea. But yeah, Diane Sawyer or whoever it is. But yeah, this happened, oh, I'm not gay. This happened, oh, I don't bleach my skin. That's all it really needs. There's no observation that he's controlling anything internally that would lead to signs of deception.
Is a lie, untrue. I can't make out this part there.
It is illegible in portions, that's true.
And Jesus said to love the children and be like children. Be youthful and be innocent and be pure and honorable. He was talking to his apostles, and they were fighting over who's the greatest among themselves. And he said, whoever humbled yourself like this child is the greatest among me. And he always surrounded himself with children. And that's how I was raised, to believe and to be like that and to imitate that. So I don't know what you're trying to make out of it.
Yeah, which for a lot of people is incredibly unconventional, and given the lack of social growth that he's had, he might not have the awareness to know that people would consider that wrong. So his actions would only compound their observations more, and it would kick up this firestorm that it became. I see no signs of deception in there at all. Does that mean he's telling the truth? No. Because he could be the world's most incredible liar, and I'm just not equipped enough to catch him. This is about my observations of that. I don't see anything that can't be explained by somebody who's gone through this this kind of information a lot. Somebody who doesn't have the same behavioural makeup as 90% of the human race, given the ridiculously different life he's had to lead since, what, 6? However young he was when he first started singing with the Jackson 5. I do know a little bit about what his father did to him, which would have affected his perception of what it means to be a role model for youngsters in his personal sphere of focus, which could have affected the way other parents around him would have perceived those actions. And because he doesn't have that awareness, there's definitely a lack of capacity when it comes to awareness of his actions. 100%, right? 100%. He doesn't understand what would be considered right or wrong. But when it comes to the specific nature of molestation and the other kind, I don't know what the other kind of sexual acts he was accused of, but when it comes to that and the denies that he gave, there's no signs of deception there for me at all. No signs. His face being constructed in the way that what it is, it doesn't move in the conventional manner, so you have to adjust your reads accordingly. But yeah, no signs of deception there for me. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. It's a debate that's gone on for years and probably will go on for years as well. So yeah, I'm curious as to what you think. Let me know. If you enjoyed that, if you got any kind of informational takeaway, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and drop a like and all that other kind of 21st century stuff. It helps more people see the video. If we can get this information out there, then more people will become aware of, well, at least my method to reading people that we're trying to take towards more and more people. So yeah. Next up, I'm unaware of what's next up, but there's lots more stuff coming your way. Hopefully, when I get off my walking stick and the meds, I'll be better suited to doing a few more. But until that time, I hope everyone's keeping safe and well out there. We've had some good news regarding getting out of lockdown in the UK, but the nature of English people en masse being what it is, they'll probably ruin it. So yeah, I hope you're all keeping safe and well out there, and I will talk to you soon.